The courtroom was completely silent, so quiet you could hear the creaking of chairs as people sat down. Lauren took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. This was the day she had both dreaded and longed for. The day everything would be put to the test. Standing before him, Ethan looked so confident, almost smiling, as if he were about to win a game he already considered won. His dark suit and perfectly styled hair only reinforced the air of superiority that had always accompanied him. He truly believed he would walk away with everything, the house, the car, even custody of the children. When the judge entered the room, everyone stood in respect. Lauren felt a shiver run down her spine. The judge's deep voice echoed in the room as he ordered everyone to sit. She kept her eyes fixed on the table in front of her, avoiding Ethan's confident gaze. His lawyer spoke first, describing Lauren as an unstable woman, unable to maintain a stable home and financially dependent. Each word was like a punch to the gut. Lauren clasped her hands in her lap, fighting to keep from reacting. Next, it was Laura's turn, his lawyer. With firm steps, she stood and said confidently, "Your Honor, we ask that all charges be heard with caution. We have evidence that contradicts the defense's version of events and will completely change the course of this trial." The judge nodded grimly. Ethan shot Lauren a quick look, as if to intimidate her, but she took a deep breath and stood her ground. She had spent months preparing for this moment. As she listened to each argument, Lauren felt a mixture of fear and hope growing within her. It wasn't just about material possessions or who would get the children. It was about finally being heard, about showing the world who Ethan really was. The judge announced that the hearing would continue with the presentation of evidence later in the session. Lauren closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself a single deep breath before the storm. She was ready to fight. 2 years before that fateful hearing, Lauren and Ethan were seen as the perfect neighborhood couple. They lived in a charming red brick house in a quiet Ohio suburb. The lawn was always well kept, with colorful flowers in the front yard and an American flag waving gently on the porch. In the eyes of their neighbors, they were the picture of success: a hard-working husband, a devoted wife, and 2 adorable children. Mornings were a busy, organized affair. Lauren made coffee and pancakes and packed the kids' lunchboxes. Ethan sipped his coffee quickly while reading the news on his phone, giving his wife just a quick kiss before heading off to work. "See you tonight," he'd say, already out the door. Lauren smiled, even though she felt a small emptiness whenever the house fell silent. On weekends, they'd have backyard barbecues, inviting neighbors over. Ethan was always the center of attention, sharing office stories and making everyone laugh. Lauren was proud of him, even when his jokes made her inwardly roll her eyes. At that time, she believed their marriage was solid, that they were building something together. But the first signs of wear and tear began to appear subtly. Ethan started arriving home late, always with the same excuse: last-minute meeting, traffic on the highway. Lauren believed him. After all, he'd always been dedicated to work, but his phone was constantly locked and messages were secretly replied to. Lauren tried to convince herself it was just stress. She spent her afternoons helping the kids with their homework, taking care of the house, and hoping that eventually her husband would sit next to her on the couch like he used to. But the nights were getting quieter and quieter. One night, she woke up and realized Ethan wasn't in bed. Going downstairs, she saw the office light on and found him on the phone, laughing in a way she hadn't heard in a long time. When she asked, he simply said he was talking to a co-worker. Lauren didn't press the issue, but the feeling that something was wrong began to grow. Still, there were moments that warmed Lauren's heart. Family Christmases, when Ethan helped the kids put up the tree, summer trips to visit her parents in another state, lazy Sundays when everyone stayed out in their pajamas until late. These moments made her believe that everything could still be saved. But the emotional distance only grew. Lauren began to feel alone, even though she lived in the same house. There were days when she wondered if Ethan still loved her, or if he was simply staying in the marriage out of obligation. This silent, persistent doubt set the stage for the storm that would follow. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when Lauren decided to tidy up Ethan's office. He had left early, saying he was spending the night on a business trip, and she took advantage of the quiet of the house to organize stacks of documents scattered across the desk. Among the bills and work papers, she found receipts from expensive restaurants, hotels in nearby cities, and purchases she had never seen arrive at home. Lauren's heart began to race. He sat on the floor and spread everything out, analyzing each date. The expenses coincided with days Ethan claimed to be overwhelmed with meetings. A mixture of nausea and anger rose in his throat. The final sting came when Ethan's phone, forgotten on his desk, vibrated. The screen displayed a message: "Can't wait to see you tonight." Lauren felt her hands tremble as she unlocked the phone. The conversation was clear. There were photos, sweet messages, and travel plans. The woman's name was Tanya. Lauren felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. She cried alone for a few minutes, feeling every shred of trust she had in her husband shatter. When Ethan returned home that night, he found Lauren sitting on the couch, her eyes red, his phone in her hand. "Who is she, Ethan?" he asked, his voice shaky but firm. He was silent for a few seconds, then let out a heavy sigh. "Lauren, I didn't want it to be like this. But we both know it hasn't worked for a long time. I love Tanya. I want a divorce." The words were like a blade piercing Lauren's chest. She stood up slowly, choking back tears. "You want a divorce? Great. But don't think you'll come out on top after everything you've done." Ethan narrowed his eyes, crossing his arms. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. I intend to file for the house and custody of the children. You haven't worked in years. I'm the provider. The children need stability." Lauren felt her entire body tremble, but she remained standing. "Children need love, Ethan. Something you failed to provide when you decided to betray the family you had here." He turned away and went upstairs to his room without answering. Lauren, alone in the living room, sat on the floor and cried until her body ached. But amidst the pain, something sparked inside her. She wouldn't be destroyed so easily. The next morning, after dropping the kids off at school, Lauren called a longtime friend who had gone through a difficult divorce. She recommended Laura, a family lawyer known for her ruthlessness when it came to justice. At their first meeting, Lauren explained everything, from the receipts to Ethan's confession. Laura listened quietly, taking notes, and then said, "Lauren, you have more power than you think, but we'll need solid evidence. If he's diverting family funds to this other woman, we can take that to court." Those words were exactly what Lauren needed to hear. For the first time since the discovery, she felt a glimmer of hope. The pain was still there, but now she had a direction to fight for herself and her children. The next few days were a whirlwind for Lauren. She would get up early, make breakfast for the children, and as soon as they left for school, she would plunge into a marathon of evidence gathering. With the help of Laura, her lawyer, Lauren began reviewing every bank statement, every credit card transaction, and every message on Ethan's phone that was still within reach. What she found wasn't just an emotional betrayal, it was also financial. There were recurring hotel payments, expensive gifts, money transfers to an account she didn't recognize. Each discovery was painful, but it also fueled her determination. Laura helped organize everything into a chronological dossier, demonstrating that Ethan had been embezzling money from the joint account to support his relationship with Tanya. "This will carry a lot of weight in court," Laura said, pointing to the stack of documents. "The judge needs to see that he not only betrayed the family's trust, but also compromised everyone's financial well-being." In addition to the physical evidence, Lauren also began preparing herself emotionally. She began attending therapy sessions twice a week, something Laura encouraged. You need to be strong, she advised. The courtroom can be a hostile place, and Ethan will try to paint you as the villain. Don't give him that power. Lauren followed the advice to the letter. Over time, she began to feel more grounded, less broken. She began sleeping better, eating healthier, and even resumed some activities she'd abandoned, like taking a walk in the park at dawn. Each step was a silent reminder that she still had control over her own life. Meanwhile, Ethan seemed more confident than ever. He paced the house as if he were already the winner, talking openly about when this is all over and when I get the house. Lauren listened silently, each word reinforcing her desire for justice. The day of the hearing approached, and with it, the tension grew. Lauren began to rehearse with Laura all the answers she might need to give the judge. "Be clear, be objective," the lawyer repeated. "Don't fall for provocations, don't cry in front of him. Let the evidence speak for you." The night before the trial, Lauren stayed up late, mentally reviewing every detail. She picked up the file once more and felt the weight of the paper in her hands. It was more than just a bunch of documents. It was proof that she wasn't crazy, that what she felt was well-founded. Before going to sleep, she passed by the children's room, where they slept peacefully, oblivious to the approaching storm. She whispered to herself, "For you. All of this is for you." Lauren knew that the next day could change everything. There was fear, of course, but also a spark of courage she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time, she was ready to face Ethan head-on. Judgment Day dawned grey, as if even the sky sensed the tension in the air. Lauren got up before her alarm, took a long shower, and dressed with the care of someone preparing for battle. She chose a discreet but elegant suit and tied her hair in a tight bun. She didn't want to appear fragile or defeated. She wanted every detail to convey that she was here to fight. When she arrived at the courthouse, her heart raced. The hallway was crowded with people, lawyers hurriedly walking, family members from other cases whispering, guards positioned at every entrance. Ethan was already there, leaning against the wall with that same air of superiority that irritated her. Beside him was Tanya, dressed provocatively, as if she were going to a party rather than a courtroom. Lauren took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked over to Laura, who was already waiting for her with a folder full of documents. "Ready?" the lawyer asked, offering a reassuring smile. Lauren nodded, even though she felt a knot in her stomach. When the court clerk called the case, everyone filed into the room. The atmosphere was cold, silent, almost oppressive. The judge entered and everyone stood. Lauren kept her gaze straight ahead, avoiding Ethan's gaze. Laura whispered, "Remember, stay calm. What we're about to present speaks for itself." Ethan's lawyer spoke first, painting a carefully crafted portrait of a devoted husband who simply wanted a fair separation. He asked that Ethan keep the house and a larger share of the assets, arguing that Lauren had been negligent and that he was the family's true provider. Each word felt like a knife, but Lauren remained motionless, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. When Laura's turn came, the atmosphere changed. She stood slowly, her posture firm, and began speaking with a clarity that immediately caught everyone's attention. "Your Honor, what will be presented here today goes beyond a simple divorce. It is a breach of trust, an attempt to deceive this court and to deprive my client of what is rightfully hers." Lauren watched Ethan shift uncomfortably in his chair, a faint sign that his confidence was beginning to crack. Tanya, beside him, was fiddling with her phone, seemingly bored, unaware that her presence would soon become crucial. The judge listened intently, taking notes. The hearing moved at a tense pace, each argument carefully recorded. Lauren felt the weight of everyone's gaze, but she also sensed something different, a growing sense that the game was changing. When Laura presented the first documents, proving the money transfers and hotel expenses, the room fell silent. Ethan tried to maintain a neutral expression, but a blush crept up his face. Tanya dropped her phone in surprise and looked at him as if only now realizing the depth of her trouble. This was just the beginning. Lauren felt the air in the courtroom grow heavy as Laura asked to present the next piece of evidence. Until then, Ethan still seemed to believe he could get away with some favorable plea deal. But the tension in his jaw betrayed that he was beginning to grasp the gravity of the situation. "Your Honor," Laura began, her voice calm but filled with authority, "what I'm about to present is not only relevant to the division of assets, but also to Mr. Ethan's credibility before this court." She handed a new folder to the judge, who began leafing through the documents. Ethan shifted in his chair, giving Lauren a warning look, as if he still held some power over her. But Lauren kept her head high, looking directly at the judge. The lawyer continued, "My client discovered that her husband was not only diverting funds from the family account to support an extramarital affair, but also opening a shell company in the name of a third party to hide part of the couple's income and prevent it from being considered in the division agreement." A murmur ran through the courtroom. The judge raised his eyebrows, clearly interested. Ethan's lawyer tried to intervene, saying it wasn't relevant, but Laura was quick. "Your Honor, we have bank records, emails, and even messages between Mr. Ethan and Ms. Tanya, in which they openly discuss how to move the money without my client finding out." There was absolute silence. The judge ordered the documents to be projected onto the courtroom screen. Suddenly, everyone could see the messages exchanged between Ethan and Tanya. In one of them, Ethan said, "Once the divorce is final, Lauren will be left with nothing. We'll start over, just the two of us, and she'll be on her own." Lauren took a deep breath. That was the sentence she dreaded hearing, but at the same time, it was the weapon she needed. Tanya clapped her hand over her mouth, shocked. It wasn't just the public exposure, it was the realization that Ethan had used her, that she too was a disposable pawn in his plan. The judge banged his gavel on the table, demanding silence. "Mr. Ethan, do you have anything to say about these messages?" Ethan stammered, trying to argue that it was just idle chatter, but his voice was shaking. Tanya stood up suddenly, her eyes brimming with tears, and hurried from the room, unable to meet the gazes now following her. Lauren stood her ground, but inside she felt a wave of relief and justice. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like the weaker party. Ethan's face was flushed, and he could barely look at the judge. Laura took advantage of the moment of silence to conclude, "Your Honor, what my client asks for is not revenge, but justice. This man attempted to manipulate the case, hide assets, and deceive this court. We ask that this be taken into consideration in the verdict." The judge nodded, saying that this material completely changed the course of the case, and that the court would consider the attempted fraud in the final judgment. Lauren felt her legs nearly give out, but she stood her ground. This was the climax of it all, the turning point she'd been waiting for. The courtroom was completely silent when the judge returned with the verdict in hand. Lauren felt her heart race, but she kept her head high. Laura, beside her, took a deep breath and gave her a firm look, as if to say, "It's almost over." Ethan, on the other hand, looked defeated, his shoulders slumped, his gaze lost on the floor, as if he'd finally understood he no longer controlled the narrative. The judge cleared his throat and began speaking, his solemn voice echoing throughout the courtroom, after reviewing all the evidence presented. "This court concludes that Mr. Ethan deliberately attempted to conceal assets and manipulate the divorce proceedings to the detriment of his wife. Such conduct will not be tolerated." Lauren felt a knot loosen in her chest. Each word the judge said seemed to restore a piece of the dignity she had lost. "The court orders," he continued, "that all of the couple's assets be divided equally, including the hidden amounts that Mr. Ethan must repay. Furthermore, it is ordered that full child support be paid to the minor children and that joint custody be granted, with the mother as the primary residence. Ethan closed his eyes and ran his hands over his face. The room seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, along with Lauren. Laura smiled slightly, but maintained her professional demeanor until the end. The judge banged the gavel. "It is closed." Lauren felt her legs tremble as she stood. It wasn't just about money or who would get the house. It was about the fact that for the first time, her voice had been heard. She turned to Laura and hugged her quickly. "Thank you," she whispered. As she left the courthouse, she felt the cool air hit her face. Ethan walked past her without a word, his gaze hard and resentful, but Lauren felt no anger, only compassion. He had lost control, and she had gained something far more valuable than possessions: peace of mind. Outside, Lauren's children were waiting for her with their grandmother. Seeing them, she knelt down and hugged them tightly. "Everything's okay. We're going to be okay," he said, tears streaming down his face. The children smiled with relief, and Lauren felt the weight of months of anguish finally lift. Later, back home, she prepared dinner with a calm she hadn't felt in a long time. The table seemed brighter, and the children's laughter filled the room. When she finally sat alone on the porch, a cup of coffee in her hands, Lauren looked up at the sky, now tinted orange and pink by the sunset. It wasn't just a victory in court, he thought. It was the beginning of a new life. A soft smile formed on her face. For the first time in a long time, she felt that the future was a safe place, and that no matter what challenge lay ahead, she had the strength to face it.